I died on the 37th day after I was deposed as Empress. It was raining that spring beyond the palace walls. The great bells tolled 12 times. The imperial physicians said grief had settled too deeply in my heart. They said no medicine could save me. But I knew better. I was simply tired. I had been tired for most of my life. At 12, I learned how to manage a household. At 14, I learned how to entertain guests and preserve the dignity of the Shin family. At 16, I married Pei Hong. At 18, I took over the estates and accounts of his princely household. At 23, I followed him into the Eastern Palace when he became crown prince. At 27, he ascended the throne, and at last I sat upon the phoenix seat that every noble woman in the capital envied. I sat there for 3 months. Only 3. On the 6th day of the 3rd month, Pei Hong placed the decree of deposition before me. He said I was jealous. He said I could not tolerate another woman. He said that as Empress, I lacked the magnanimity required of the mother of the realm. I stared at the decree for a long time without speaking, because the woman chosen to replace me was my younger half-sister, Shin Mingzhu. The same sister who from the time we were 14 had always wanted whatever I had. I looked at Pei Hong and asked, all these years I managed your household, balanced your accounts, dealt with the imperial clan, and used my own dowry to cover one shortage after another for you. Have you forgotten all of it? He was silent for a moment. Then he said only, Jiwei, you have spent your entire life fighting for everything. If you had been a little more gentle, a little more yielding like Mingzhu, how could we have ended like this? I laughed. So that was it. When he needed me to work for him, my competence had been virtue. When he no longer needed me, that same competence became arrogance. Everything I had fought to obtain for him had become evidence that I loved to fight. Rain tapped against the broad leaves outside the window. When I closed my eyes, only one thought remained. If I could do it all again, I would fight for nothing. Whoever wanted to compete could compete. I was done. My lady, you need to wake up. Master has sent someone 3 times already. If you still refuse to rise, you'll truly miss the hour. My eyes flew open. Above me was not the cold ceiling of the neglected palace where a deposed empress had been left to die. It was an old bed canopy embroidered with magnolia blossoms. A tiny silver bell hung from one corner of the pale green gauze. Outside, apricot blossoms had only just opened, and whenever the wind stirred, the bell chimed softly. I stared at it for a long time. Then my fingers slowly clenched around the quilt. This was my western courtyard, the room I had lived in when I was 14. I looked down. My wrists were smooth. There were no blue veins standing out beneath skin wasted by illness. My fingers were slender and young. Beside the bed lay the copy of Lessons for Women I had fallen asleep reading the night before. Outside the door, Nanny Chin was still calling. My lady, the 4th prince has already arrived in the front courtyard. Master says it's only a family banquet. The pale lotus-colored dress will be proper enough. The 4th prince. Pei Hong. My mind went blank. March 18th. The day I had first formally met Pei Hong when I was 14 in my previous life. I had spent 3 days choosing what to wear for that meeting. My mother had died early. I had been terrified of appearing improper, yet equally terrified that someone else might outshine me. I had worked myself into such a state that I barely slept the night before. For many years afterward, I believed that day had been the beginning of my destiny. Thinking about it now, I had been right. It was the beginning of my terrible destiny. The door opened a crack. Nanny Chin peered inside. My lady, I pulled the quilt over myself. I'm not going. She froze. What? The banquet. I'm not going. I'm sleepy. I rolled over and turned my back to her. For a long moment, Nanny Chin said nothing. She probably thought I was sick. She came over and touched my forehead. No fever. You were saying just last night that you wanted to try that new hairpin yourself. I closed my eyes. I don't want to anymore. But the fourth prince, I don't know him. And I don't want to know him. I buried my face in the pillow. Nanny Chin sucked in a breath. My lady, you mustn't let master hear you say that. I did not answer. The room fell silent. Then her footsteps hurried away. No need to guess where she was going. Sure enough, less than the time it took to drink a cup of tea, my father arrived. The curtain was swept aside. Jiwei. At 14, that tone had terrified me. Whenever my father lowered his voice like that, I immediately searched myself for whatever I had done wrong. Now I only felt sleepy. I sat up and pulled a robe around my shoulders. Father stood beside the bed and looked at me. Are you unwell? No. Then why are you not in the front courtyard? I want to sleep. His brows drew together. Today is not the day for childish nonsense. You are the legitimate eldest daughter of the Shin family. An imperial prince visits our home and you hide in your room sleeping. What does that look like? There it was again. You are the legitimate eldest daughter of the Shin family. I had heard those words my entire previous life. Because I was the eldest legitimate daughter, I had to take care of my younger sister. Because I was the eldest legitimate daughter, I had to make father's life easier. Because I was the eldest legitimate daughter, my marriage could not be chosen solely according to what I wanted. Later I became a prince's wife. Then I had to be virtuous because I was a prince's consort. I became crown princess. Then I had to be dignified. I became empress. Then I had to be tolerant. Layer after layer of identity pressed down upon me until in the end I could no longer remember what Shinjiwei herself wanted. I looked at my father as he had been when I was 14. Then I asked, Mingzhu has already gone to the front courtyard, hasn't she? He paused. She is herself. You are yourself. If she wants to see him, let her. I won't compete. Then I lay back down. Father's expression changed. Who are you angry with? No one. Is this because Mingzhu took your magnolia hairpin yesterday? For a moment, I couldn't even remember what he meant. Then the small incident surfaced from some distant corner of memory. Yesterday afternoon, Mingzhu had said she liked the new magnolia hairpin made for me. I had refused to give it to her. She cried. Father said it was only a hairpin and told me to let my younger sister have it. I was angry all night. In my previous life, I had indeed attended the banquet while still carrying that resentment. For years afterward, Mingzhu used the story to tease me, claiming that even as a child, I could never bear to see her receive anything good. Now it only seemed ridiculous. I closed my eyes. It's only a hairpin. If she likes it, give it to her. Father fell silent. Strangely enough, there was something almost unsettled in that silence, perhaps in his understanding of me. I was supposed to fight. If I stopped fighting, no one knew what to do with me. Finally, he said, come to my study later. I have something to discuss with you. The door closed. I lay there for a long time. I did not fall asleep again. Memories poured into my head like rainwater. Peihong, the Phoenix Throne, the decree that had deposed me, my mother. Then I suddenly remembered something far more important. When I married in my previous life, the dowry left to me by my mother appeared generous. But when I finally examined it carefully, I discovered that a substantial amount of silver had already been diverted for the Shen household's use. Father had said the family only borrowed it temporarily. You are marrying into a prince's household. Will you ever lack for money after that? Back then I had thought his words reasonable. I even voluntarily left the income from several shops with the Shen family. Later, when Pei Hong's household lacked funds, I poured what remained into his accounts too. I had spent my entire life allowing other people to use my things temporarily. Yet when I was deposed, those same people still said, she has everything. Yet she is never satisfied. I sat bolt upright. Nanny Chin came in immediately. My lady, where is the account chest my mother left behind? She blinked. Why are you suddenly asking about that? I want to see it. It's in the old storeroom. Some of the account books have been kept by master's people in recent years. I swung my legs out of bed and put on my shoes. Nanny Chin hurried to help me. Not sleeping anymore? I considered the question. I'll sleep after I finish looking at the accounts. Pei Hong could go. The imperial throne could go. But the money stayed. I had already died once. This time, at the very least, I intended to make sure I had enough money that no one could drag me out of bed and marry me off simply because I couldn't afford to say no. There were 7 camphorwood trunks in the old storeroom. Nanny Chin searched for nearly half a day before pulling out a green lacquered account chest that had belonged to my mother. The lock was old. I opened the first ledger. The pages had yellowed with age. My mother's handwriting was graceful and neat. The first few pages recorded income and expenses from farmland and shops. When I reached the 5th year, my hand stopped. A line of black ink read, 30,000 taels of Lady Shen's dowry silver borrowed for temporary household use. Beneath it was my father's signature. I stared at the word borrowed for a long time. Then I laughed. So even father had known. In the beginning, it had been a loan. It had only been borrowed for so long that everyone eventually forgot it was supposed to be repaid. I closed the ledger. Nanny Chin looked at me anxiously. My lady, I lifted the account chest into my arms. Nanny, please send for shopkeeper Ju. And tell father something for me. I won't see the 4th prince today, but I'll definitely come to his study this evening. Not for Pei Hong. For 30,000 taels of silver. Shopkeeper Ju arrived faster than I expected. He had entered my mother's household as part of her marriage retinue and had managed the Sunqian paper mill for me ever since. In my previous life, I did not truly deal with him until shortly before I married at 16. By then, he had already grown old. I remembered how he handed me a stack of ledgers and seemed to want to say something. But I had been consumed by wedding preparations. I never asked. Seeing him again now, still in his 40s, filled me with an almost painful sense of unreality. He bowed. My lady. I told Nanny Chin to close the door. Uncle Ju, there's no need for all that ceremony. He visibly froze. When I was little, I had called him that. Later, father said I was growing up and needed to remember the proper distinctions between mistress and servant. So I stopped. I placed the old ledger on the table. I want to see the detailed accounts for the last 5 years. His eyes changed. Why has my lady suddenly become interested in such things? I want to know how much money I have. He fell silent. Perhaps he had never met a 14-year-old girl who spoke so bluntly about money. I found it faintly amusing myself. Don't worry, Uncle Ju. I have no intention of selling the paper mill. I simply think that from now on I should know what belongs to me." He was quiet for a moment. Then he took a ring of keys from his sleeve. "If my lady truly wants to see them, then you should." Something about those words made my nose sting. In my previous life, everyone had said the opposite. "You don't need to know. Your father will handle it. Your husband will handle it. The palace administration will handle it." As if a woman knowing exactly what she possessed were somehow indecent. In the end, I had managed everything except myself. The accounts shopkeeper Jew brought were far more detailed than those in the old storeroom. My mother's holdings were not vast enough to shake the capital, but they were more than enough. 1 paper mill. 1 bookstore in the western city. 2 farms south of the capital. A 3-courtyard residence on the southern side of the city. Savings held at a silver house. Jewelry and household valuables. If managed steadily, I could live comfortably for the rest of my life. The more I read, the happier I became. Now this was valuable. What use was the Phoenix Throne? It made my back ache and you couldn't even take an afternoon nap whenever you wanted. I was adding columns when a maid called from outside. "Second lady has arrived." Xun Mingzhu did not wait for permission before lifting the curtain and walking in. She wore a pale yellow spring gown. At 14, her face was round, bright, and beautiful. When she saw the ledgers spread across my table, surprise flashed across her face. "Sister, what are you doing?" "Looking at accounts." She came closer. "I thought you hated numbers." I glanced up at her. At 14, I did. I only began seriously learning accounts after marrying into Pei Hong's household. He praised me for being clever. That was all it took. I threw myself into learning everything. Looking back now, one compliment from him had been extraordinarily expensive. It cost me more than 10 years. Mingzhu quickly lost interest in the ledgers and touched the jeweled flower in her hair instead. "Sister didn't come to the front courtyard today. The 4th prince even asked about you. He asked if you were unwell. I explained for you." "Thank you." At last, she couldn't maintain her composure. "Don't you want to know what I said?" I looked up. "What did you say?" Her eyes brightened. "I said you were so nervous about today's banquet that you couldn't sleep last night." His Highness laughed. "He said you were too serious." In my previous life, I would have immediately thought, does he think I'm petty now? Did Mingzhu deliberately make it sound as though I care too much about him? Why did he smile at her? Now I only thought, how exhausting. I nodded. "I see." Mingzhu waited. "That's all?" "What else?" "You aren't angry?" "About what?" She pressed her lips together. "I played the zither for the 4th prince today. He said I played beautifully." "Then you're very good." She had no answer at all. The expression on her face became so strained that I nearly laughed. In our previous life, my sister and I had fought for years. Much of her pleasure had indeed depended upon my displeasure. Now that I refused to react, even her victories had nowhere to land. After a moment, she suddenly asked, "Sister, do you truly not like the 4th prince?" My fingers paused for the briefest instant. That was difficult, because he would depose me someday. After thinking, I said, "I simply don't want to marry him." She studied me. Suspicion, calculation, and beneath both, unmistakable hope. "If sister truly doesn't like him, then it doesn't matter if I do." For the first time, I truly saw 14-year-old Shin Mingzhu. She was nowhere near as composed as the woman she later became. If she liked something, she wanted it. If she wanted to compete, she competed. She was almost desperate for my permission. I lowered my gaze to the ledger again. It doesn't matter who you like. That is your business. As long as you don't use my money to support him. Mingzhu was speechless. She left wearing a very complicated expression. I, meanwhile, found something far more interesting. The recorded profits of Sunxian paper mill had been falling year by year. Yet the quantity of paper leaving the mill had not decreased. Several portions of the profits had been transferred directly into the general Shin household accounts. I looked at shopkeeper Ju. Did father take these? Master said the family needed money to repair the ancestral hall. Later there were expenses for young master's studies and the old madam's birthday banquet. Why aren't they in the old storeroom accounts? Shopkeeper Ju hesitated. Master's accountants only sent a general annual summary there. My lady was young. They likely believed you did not need to know. Again. You don't need to know. I took up my brush. First entry, second, third. I filled 4 pages. Together with the original 30,000 taels, the amount had become substantial. Shopkeeper Ju lowered his voice. If my lady confronts master now, I'm afraid I won't make a scene. He looked surprised. I'll first make sure every account is clear. Everything taken in the past will be recorded one item at a time. If anything is taken in the future, I must know. As for the old debt, I blew gently over the wet ink. They can repay it slowly. Shopkeeper Ju studied me for a long moment. Then he smiled. My lady has grown up. I had heard those words countless times before. For the first time, they did not feel heavy. Because this time, growing up did not mean carrying someone else's burden. It only meant knowing how to protect my own money. Before leaving, shopkeeper Ju produced an old contract. My lady, there is one more matter. The watermill used by Sunxian shares part of its channel with the Gu family's workshop. The 5-year agreement expires next month. Your mother signed the original. Whether to renew it is your decision. The Gu family? They own Hacking Press. The person managing it now is the eldest grandson of the Gu family's second branch, Gu Chongyang. I had never heard the name. Not in my previous life either. I had revolved around Pei Hong too tightly. I had known many people in the capital, but all of them had been people I was supposed to know. Anyone irrelevant to a prince's future had probably never even entered my memory. I accepted the contract. I'll go see it in a few days. That evening, I went to father's study as promised. The first thing he said was, before leaving today, the 4th prince asked about you again. I sat down. Oh. My indifference clearly irritated him. Jiwei, you're no longer a child. There are things you should understand. Imperial marriages are not games. Father, I interrupted him. I didn't come here to discuss the 4th prince. I placed the copied accounts in front of him. I came to discuss these sums of silver. Father looked down. His expression slowly darkened. I felt strangely light. In my previous life, 14-year-old me had been consumed with questions such as, does Pei Hong like me? Is Shin Mingzhu stealing attention from me? Does father love my sister more? Living again, I finally understood. None of those questions mattered. The silver was real. Father read the pages. His face grew increasingly unpleasant. Who told you to investigate these things? My mother left them to me. Am I not allowed to investigate? That's not what I mean. Then what do you mean? He looked at me for a long time. He said nothing. Perhaps he had never imagined I might question him so directly. Before, one frown from him would have sent me rushing to explain myself. Now I offered no explanation. The study became so quiet that I could hear the faint sound of tea moving in its cup. At last, Father said, this money wasn't used for anything improper. Repairing the ancestral hall benefited the entire Shin family. Your elder brother's education will benefit you too if he becomes successful. And your grandmother's birthday banquet concerned the dignity of the whole household. Why must you calculate everything so precisely? I listened to those familiar arguments and suddenly I understood something. Father did not think he had done anything wrong. He sincerely believed that a family's money should be pooled for family use. It was simply that within this thing called family, the person easiest to take from had always been me. I never said you couldn't borrow it, I said. But if it's borrowed, it should be recorded. There should be a clear understanding of when and how it will be repaid. His brows tightened. You are a young, unmarried girl. Do you truly think your own family will steal your money? I'm not afraid you'll steal it. I want things separated clearly. Is there a difference? Yes. I met his eyes. If Father lent a colleague 3,000 taels today, you would demand a written note. Why does borrowing 30,000 from your daughter become something that requires no record because we're family? His face changed at once. What sort of thing is that to say? A perfectly ordinary thing. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't even angry, unlike in my previous life. My eyes were not filling with tears. I simply did not want to retreat. Father's voice lowered. Jiwei, you have always been the most sensible child. There it was. I smiled faintly. Father, does being sensible mean my things are the easiest to take? He stared at me. I drew another sheet of paper from my sleeve. I won't demand that the family repay everything immediately. 3 years, 5 years, either is acceptable. But from now on, mother's shops and farms will no longer be merged into the household's general accounts. Any borrowed expense must be approved by me. I'm still young, so Nanny Chin and shopkeeper Ju can verify things together. You want to separate yourself from the family? No. Only the accounts. What's the difference? Clear accounts mean affection doesn't have to be proven with money. The moment I said it, even I was startled. I had never understood that in my previous life. I only knew how to give, to father, to Pei Hong, to the Shin family, to the prince's household, as though only by constantly handing pieces of myself away could I prove that I cared. But what kind of love required a person to empty herself completely? Father stared at me for a long time. Surprisingly, he did not become angrier. He simply picked up his brush beneath the copied record. He wrote, "Silver borrowed by the Shin household from Lady Shin's dowry." Then he signed his name. I stared at that single word, borrowed. Something inside my chest gently settled. Not because the money had already returned, but because at last someone had acknowledged that it had always belonged to me. It was dark when I left the study. Nanny Chin had been waiting outside. The moment she saw me, she hurried forward. "Master didn't punish you, did he?" "He scolded me a little." And then nothing. I handed her the signed account. "Keep this safe." When Nanny Chin saw the words, her eyes immediately reddened. "My lady, your mother was always afraid these accounts would become mixed with the Shin households." She used to say that if you had property of your own, you would never have to live by watching another person's expression. My steps slowed. Mother had died too early. My memories of her were already blurred. I remembered only that her hands were soft when I woke from afternoon naps as a child. She was often seated near the window, calculating accounts. Back then, I hated the clicking of her abacus. I once hugged my quilt and asked, "Mother, why do you always count these things?" She pinched my cheek and smiled. Because silver doesn't count itself. Later, Father told me that girls should not be too concerned with money. So I stopped asking. Now I understood what Mother had truly wanted to leave me was not merely wealth. It was the freedom not to beg. For the next several days, I buried myself in old accounts. The more I read, the more I realized how little I knew. Which bamboo fibers Sun Xian used. How often the watermill needed repairs. Which sections of farmland flooded easily. That the best-selling books in our bookstore were not poetry collections at all, but ledgers and primers for children. I knew none of it. Being reborn had not magically made me capable of everything. There was only one thing I knew better than my 14-year-old self, whom not to trust. As for how to live this life, I would still have to learn. 5 days later, I went to Sunxian Paper Mill with shopkeeper Ju. It stood beside the river south of the city. The air smelled of wet bamboo and timber. The moment we entered the yard, I heard an argument. The afternoon watermill has always belonged to us. Yen Master Gu, the old agreement is perfectly clear. A young man's calm voice replied, "Then please bring out the contract, shopkeeper Ju." If I remembered incorrectly, I'll yield. If I didn't, then I would ask the Shin family not to turn old arrangements into new rules simply because your young lady has never visited personally. Shopkeeper Ju's face changed. I stopped at the doorway. The speaker had his back to me. He was tall and wore a somewhat worn blue-green robe. There were no embroidered sleeves or jade ornaments. There was even a streak of ink on one cuff. I raised a hand, signaling shopkeeper Ju not to speak. Then I took out the old contract myself. I read it once, then again. After a while, I discovered we had apparently overlooked a line. The afternoon watermill belongs to Sun Xian. Beneath it, in smaller characters, on the 5th and 15th of each month, hacking press shall have half a day. Today was the 15th. I stood in the doorway. This was awkward. My first business negotiation after being reborn, and I hadn't even spoken yet and I was already wrong. The man turned. He looked about 18 or 19. Clear, handsome features, little expression. His gaze fell to the contract in my hands. Lady Shin. I nodded. Have you read it clearly? I drew a breath. Yes. Today belongs to you. He paused. Perhaps he hadn't expected me to admit it so quickly. I added, shopkeeper Ju remembered incorrectly. My apologies. Beside me, shopkeeper Ju opened his mouth. Gu Chongyang merely nodded. Good. No gloating. No taking advantage of the fact that I was a Shin daughter to say something generous like, "I could let you have it anyway." I found myself looking at him a second time. That was the first day I met Gu Chongyang. There were no lanterns, no dramatic rescue from a lake, no love at first sight. If anything, it was slightly embarrassing. Yet for years afterward, I remembered that meeting because after being reborn, he was the first person who did not comfort me when I was wrong, nor did he humiliate me. He simply allowed me to see where I had made the mistake. Once the watermill dispute was settled, I assumed renewing the contract would be simple. It wasn't. The old arrangement is unreasonable, Gu Chongyang said. I frowned. How? Sunshine uses about 10% more water than it did 5 years ago. Hacking has closed 2 printing rooms, so we use less. If we keep the old schedule, we lose and you remain inconvenienced. He pushed a newly calculated schedule across the table. I looked at it. It was indeed more reasonable. Still, I asked, if you use less water now, why not simply sell the unused hours to us? Gu Chongyang glanced at me. Because the channel isn't used only for paper milling. There are ink washing pools downstream. If you monopolize all of it, my people will have to wash printing blocks in the middle of the night. I fell silent. Another thing I had not known. I had once been Empress, yet standing in a paper mill, I was nearly an idiot. Shopkeeper Ju hurried to smooth things over. My lady never handled these matters before. It's natural she doesn't understand yet. I wasn't embarrassed. Instead, I asked Gu Chongyang seriously, then how do you think we should divide it? He pointed to the schedule. You still get every afternoon except the 5th and 15th. Those 2 remain our hours. But if the river falls below the 3rd stone step, both sides reduce usage. Watermill repair costs will be divided according to actual use. No one loses unfairly. I listened, then nodded. Fine. He looked surprised. You don't want time to think? You're right. Why would I deliberately delay 3 days merely to make myself look like a clever businesswoman? For the first time, he smiled. Only faintly. Lady Shen is refreshingly efficient. I thought so too. I used to spend far too much energy proving myself. If someone praised me for being clever, I would immediately feel obligated to excel at everything. Now I discovered something. Saying I don't know was wonderfully easy. After the agreement was signed, the accountant brought over the payment. Gu Chongyang collected it and left. A quarter of an hour later, he returned. He set 10 taels of silver on the table. Too much. The accountant went white. I checked the ledger. He was right. A repair fee had been charged twice. You had already walked half a street away. Yes. And you came back for 10 taels. Gu Chongyang looked at me. Why would I keep silver that isn't mine? I stared at the money and thought of Pei Hong. In my previous life, he often said, you and I are husband and wife. Why distinguish between yours and mine? So my dowry became ours. My connections became ours. My labor became ours. Yet his own possessions always remained remarkably easy to distinguish. I collected the 10 taels. Thank you. It was never mine. He turned and left. I asked shopkeeper Ju, is he rich? Shopkeeper Ju shook his head. Hacking press is barely surviving. His family wants him to close it, but he refuses. A few years ago, the family still covered some of the losses. Now I hear the second branch objects strongly. I looked toward the doorway again. A man who needed money could still refuse money that wasn't his. It was such a small thing, yet I remembered it for a very long time. 3 days after I returned home, father summoned me. A brocade box sat on his desk. Inside was a rare collection of poetry. I recognized the cover at once. The first gift Pei Hong had ever given me in my previous life. I had been happy for half a month. Years later, when a palace fire broke out, I fled with almost nothing, but I took that book. Even later, when I was deposed and palace attendants cleared away my belongings, the book fell into mud. I had crouched to wipe it clean. Now seeing it again, I felt nothing. Only stillness. father said, the fourth prince sent it. He heard from Mingzhu that you admire Master Lu's poetry. He searched specifically for this copy. I closed the box. Send it back. Father looked up. Jiwei, how long do you intend to continue this tantrum? Again. A tantrum. I looked at him. I don't want to marry him. What does that have to do with throwing a tantrum? No one said you were marrying him immediately. The two families are merely considering the possibility. If you refuse even ordinary contact, what is there to discuss later? Then don't discuss it. Shin Jiwei. For the first time, he called my full name. Marriage is not yours alone to decide. You are a daughter of the Shin family. Your marriage concerns the entire Shin family. I listened quietly. He had said the same thing in my previous life. Back then, I had even felt proud to be useful to my family. Now I simply asked, and what about what I want? Father paused. What? My marriage concerns the Shin family. Does it have anything to do with me? The room went still. It was as if Father had never truly heard the question before. After a long time, he said, You're young. There are many things you don't understand yet. Your father would never harm you. I nodded. I know. But I still don't want to marry him. He clearly could not understand. At last, he waved me away. Near the door, I encountered Mingzhu. She had probably overheard part of the conversation. Her eyes shone. She followed me down half the corridor before whispering, Sister, when you say you don't want to marry the fourth prince, do you truly mean it? Yes. You aren't doing it to make me miserable? I stopped. Mingzhu. In this life, I will never marry a man simply to make you unhappy. Her expression shifted. She could not know how much weight those words carried. I looked at her. If you like him, then go and fight for him yourself. She watched me for a long time. What if I really get him? Then he's yours. You won't regret it? I remembered the rain in the palace where I died. I smiled. No. If she truly took Pei Hong away this time, I might have to thank her. Pei Hong came to speak to me alone for the first time that April. The Shin family's spring banquet was being held. I had hidden in the back courtyard to inspect samples of new paper from the mill. A young maid ran over. Fourth prince is waiting at the waterside pavilion. He says he would like a few words with you. My first instinct was refusal. Then I reconsidered. Some things were better said clearly. Peonies bloomed thickly beside the pavilion. Pei Hong stood beneath the branches. At 18, he was very different from the man I remembered sitting upon the dragon throne. His features were gentle, his robes immaculate. He did not yet possess the suffocating authority of an emperor. For a moment, I even remembered, the first years of our marriage, it wasn't true that we had never been happy. Once when he was sick, I stayed beside him through the night. On one of my birthdays, he personally painted an orchid for me. Not all the good memories were false. That was exactly why I had fallen so deeply in my previous life. When Pei Hong saw me approach, he smiled. Lady Shin. I bowed. Your Highness. You didn't like the book I sent. The book was excellent. Then why return it? I haven't earned such a gift. He paused. It's only a book. Mingzhu told me how much you liked it. Mingzhu again. Once, hearing that name from him would have made my entire body tense. Now I was calm. Thank you for your kindness, Your Highness. But I don't need it. Pei Hong studied me. Then suddenly asked, Are you angry because of Mingzhu? I nearly laughed. No. You used to, Your Highness. I interrupted him. I don't want to marry you. Peony petals drifted across the water. The world became unnaturally quiet. Pei Hong clearly had not expected such bluntness. After a long pause, he said, When did I say I intended to marry you? Excellent. His brows drew together. I meanwhile felt extraordinarily light. My father says both families are considering it. So I'm telling you my answer today. I am unwilling. Pei Hong stared at me. Because of Mingzhu? No. Then why? I considered. There is no particular why. I simply don't choose you. It was probably the first time anyone had given him an answer like that. Some of the gentleness left his expression. May I ask what flaw Lady Shen sees in me? There. That was what he truly couldn't understand. How could someone decline to choose him if he possessed no obvious defect? Pei Hong had always been like this. He believed that as long as he was good enough, all important people should naturally remain beside him. If someone left, the problem must belong to them. I did not explain. Your Highness is excellent. But someone being excellent does not mean I am obligated to marry him. He had no answer. I bowed and left. Only after I had walked far from the pavilion did I slowly exhale. My palms were damp with sweat. So even after dying once, facing the person who had hurt me most could not be entirely effortless. But at least this time, I had not sacrificed myself because I was afraid to lose him. After the banquet, Mingzhu came to my room that night. This time she didn't circle around the subject. Sister, I like the fourth prince. I looked up. Her fingers twisted around her handkerchief. From the first time I saw him, I liked him. But father says I'm concubine-born. Even if the family considers a royal marriage, the position of principal consort should belong to you. I said nothing. Her eyes slowly reddened. Why? Father is still my father. Just because your mother was his principal wife and mine was a concubine, must I always stand behind you? I had heard those words many times in my previous life. Back then, I thought only that she was greedy. Now, after living once more, I could understand a little of her resentment. Understanding did not mean excusing everything she later did. But a person repeatedly told from childhood that she was inferior to her elder sister could easily turn defeating that sister into the purpose of her life. I set down my brush. If you truly like him, tell father. I won't stop you. She stared. You truly mean to give me the opportunity? The opportunity was never mine. Neither is Pei Hong. If you like him and he chooses you, that's between the two of you. If he doesn't choose you, don't blame me for that either. Mingzhu stared at me as though seeing me for the first time. Sister, why have you suddenly become like this? I smiled. I'm tired. She didn't understand. The next day, she truly went to father. He was furious. Mingzhu herself told me afterward. Her eyes were red, but her voice remained stubborn. He said a concubine-born daughter dreaming of becoming a prince's principal consort doesn't know her place. I didn't comfort her. I only asked, what will you do? She bit her lip. I won't give up. Then continue. She looked up. Aren't you afraid I might truly win? I laughed. Mingzhu, how do you still not understand? I have already left the game. It wasn't that I was letting her win. I simply wasn't playing. The plum rains arrived in June. A batch of paper at Sunshine was ruined. It was my fault. Shopkeeper Ju had advised moving the newly made paper into the dry warehouse early. I had checked previous year's records and believed the rainy season was still 10 days away. So I decided to wait until the watermill finished 2 more batches before storing everything together. The very next night, heavy rain came. Moisture entered 3 outer storerooms. 20% of the paper was damaged. I stood inside the warehouse staring at wrinkled edges for a long time. Beside me, shopkeeper Ju had gone pale. My lady, this old servant should have insisted. It wasn't your fault. I crouched and touched a sheet. I made the decision, so the mistake is mine. As I said it, I suddenly remembered my previous life. One year, one of the prince's investments lost money. Pei Hong had insisted upon purchasing the property. But when the accounts turned ugly, he asked me, "Weren't you the one managing these matters?" And I actually accepted the blame because I believed a virtuous wife should preserve her husband's dignity. Eventually, it became a habit. If a mistake touched me at all, I would throw myself into fixing it as though admitting fault meant admitting incompetence. Looking at it now, a mistake was simply a mistake. What was the worst that could happen? Can any of this paper still be used? I asked. Shopkeeper Ju shook his head. Not as quality paper. Bookshops won't want it either because of the dampness. I frowned. Then a voice came from outside. Make ledgers. Gu Chongyang entered. He had apparently just come from the watermill, his sleeves rolled to his forearms. He picked up a damaged sheet and held it to the light. Only the edges are wrinkled. Cut it smaller and press it flat. It will serve for children's practice books and account ledgers. Can it sell? Cheaply. You won't earn much, but it's better than burning it. I immediately turned. Uncle Ju, try what he said. Gu Chongyang looked at me. You aren't going to ask why I'm helping? Would you help for nothing? No. Then there must be something in it for you too. He nodded. Hacking needs cheap paper. If you sell this batch to me at 30% of normal price, I'll bind it into inexpensive books. We both lose less. I smiled. Done. We spent the entire afternoon sorting what could still be used. By nightfall, I was too exhausted to move. I sat on the warehouse threshold. Gu Chongyang somehow found 2 flatbreads and handed me one. It was already cold. I took a bite, hard, but when one was hungry, even hard bread tasted good. He suddenly asked, Lady Shen, how large do you want Sunshine paper mill to become? I blinked. What? You've been here almost every day for the last 2 months. If you're going to manage it, shouldn't you have a goal? A goal. In my previous life, I had never lacked goals. At 14, I wanted a good marriage. At 16, I wanted to become a prince's consort, praised by everyone. At 20, I wanted to manage Pei Hong's household perfectly. At 23, I wanted to help him secure the Eastern Palace. Then Empress. But almost none of those goals had belonged to me. Now Gu Chongyang asked how large I wanted my own paper mill to become. I had no answer. After a long silence, I said, I don't know. He didn't press me. I took another bite of bread. Maybe first, I'd like it not to lose money. Gu Chongyang nodded. Good. I looked at him. You don't think that's unambitious? Why would I? Don't people in business usually want to become bigger and bigger? Other people are other people. If you don't want bigger, don't get bigger. He said it so naturally that I didn't know what to say. In my previous life, everyone believed I ought to do more. Father said, "You're the eldest legitimate daughter. Set an example for your sister." Pei Hong said, "Jiwei, you're clever. Managing one more thing won't be difficult for you." The palace said, "Her Majesty is capable. Naturally, she should shoulder more." For the first time, someone heard me say, "I'd like not to lose money," and replied, "Good." I lowered my head and continued eating. Something inside my chest loosened. News of the ruined paper eventually reached the Shen household. Third aunt laughed in grandmother's courtyard. A young lady is still a young lady. She's never really done business. She should let the shopkeeper handle the mill instead of interfering herself. In the past, I would have immediately tried to prove her wrong. I might even have thrown more money into expanding the mill. Instead, I returned home and spent one night calculating. The following morning, I shut down the most unprofitable line of decorative paper. Shopkeeper Ju looked reluctant. "My lady, those colored papers were your mother's favorite. But they earn only 300 taels a year and occupy 2 dining rooms. Stop producing them." I set down my brush. "If we have spare money someday, we can make them again." A month later, the losses truly stopped. Sunxian did not suddenly become a glorious commercial empire. It simply stopped bleeding silver. I was delighted. When I returned home, Nanny Chin asked, "Will you look at accounts tonight?" I collapsed onto the bed. "No. Tomorrow. Tonight I'm sleeping." At last I began to understand. Resting did not mean doing nothing for the rest of my life. It meant I could decide what was worth doing, how much of it was worth doing, and when I had done enough. By July, the possibility of marriage between Mingzhu and Pei Hong had become serious. Father still disliked the idea, but Pei Hong appeared genuinely fond of her, and the imperial family did not reject it outright. When the news came, Mingzhu ran to me first, her eyes shone like they had when, as a child, she managed to snatch my favorite jeweled flower. "Sister, father says it might happen." I nodded. "Congratulations." She froze. Perhaps I sounded too sincere. She didn't know what to do with it. I smiled. "Isn't this what you've always wanted? Then walk your path well." What I did not expect was that after the betrothal became official, the first person to confront me was not Mingzhu. It was Pei Hong. He caught me beneath one of the covered walkways. Not intentionally, we simply happened to meet. I turned to leave. He called, "Shinjiwei." It was the first time he had addressed me by my full name. I stopped. "Your Highness." He studied me for a long time. "You know about my marriage to Mingzhu?" "Yes." "You have nothing to say?" "Congratulations." His expression cooled. "Only that?" I almost laughed. "What else should there be?" He frowned. "You weren't like this before." Before. This life's Pei Hong, of course, knew nothing about the true before. He meant my behavior before I turned 14. And yes, back then I had looked forward to the possibility of marrying a prince because everyone told me that marrying into the imperial family was the best future a girl could have. Pei Hong had probably decided I was only angry because of Mingzhu. People change, I said. Because of Mingzhu? No. Jiwei, his voice grew colder. Must every answer you give be so absolute? I looked at him and suddenly remembered the day he deposed me. He had said something almost identical. Must you always push everything to such an extreme? The man placing the decree of deposition in front of me had been him. Yet somehow, even then, he believed I was the one who had forced matters too far. That was Pei Hong. His greatest talent was making other people wonder whether they themselves had failed. I no longer wanted to explain. Your Highness, whether Mingzhu is the reason I do or don't want you doesn't matter. What matters is that I don't. His face finally changed. I bowed and left. My heart was still beating quickly after I had gone a long way, but I wasn't sad. It felt more like I had finally cut a cord that had been wrapped around me for years. I arrived at Sunxian in an unusually good mood. Gu Chongyang wasn't there. He didn't come the next day or the next. For 3 consecutive days, only Hacking's shopkeeper arrived to collect paper. I casually asked, "Where is your master?" The shopkeeper looked awkward. Family matters. Several days later, Gu Chongyang finally appeared. No carriage, no servant. He carried a stack of carved printing blocks in his arms himself. I stared at him. Did the Gu family throw you out? He paused. No. Almost. He put the printing blocks down. They told me to close the press and return home to prepare for the imperial examinations. You refused? Yes. So they stopped giving you money? Yes. I did not ask why he refused the examinations. In my previous life, everyone had loved asking why someone would reject the better road. I simply looked through the accounts. Hacking truly was struggling. Gu Chongyang watched me. Are you thinking of lending me money? I looked up. No. He visibly paused. I pushed a contract toward him. Next year's paper supply. 1 year. Roughly the same price as this year. As long as you pay on time. He opened it. You aren't afraid I won't survive a year? I am. That's why I'm only signing 1 year. Gu Chongyang stared at me. Then he actually laughed aloud. Not the faint smile from before. A real laugh. Shinjiwei, you can be rather cold. I'm cautious. Fine. He signed. I took back the agreement and felt perfectly at ease. I had no desire to become anyone's savior. Nor did I want people owing me favors. If we could cooperate, we cooperated. If one day we couldn't, we parted. That kind of relationship felt much more comfortable. After Mingzhu's betrothal, the Shen family began preparing her dowry. Father was extremely busy. One evening after dinner, he kept me behind. Mingzhu may be concubine-born, but she's marrying the 4th prince. The Shen family cannot let her enter the imperial household looking poor. I nodded. Of course. Father's expression relaxed slightly. The residence your mother left you in the south of the city is well located. I'll allocate it to Mingzhu. Put it on her dowry list. The teacup in my hand stopped halfway to my lips. The room was quiet. Father continued. When you marry, naturally the family will make it up to you. I slowly set down my tea. Father, that house was part of my mother's dowry. I know. If you know, why are you giving it to Mingzhu? His brows knit. You are sisters. She is marrying well. Her dignity reflects on the Shen family too. Why must you distinguish so sharply? Again, that sentence. I suddenly remembered my decree of deposition. I remembered father criticizing me in my previous life. You simply never know how to yield. Some words followed you from one family into the next. I stood. Mingzhu is my sister. I will add an appropriate gift to her dowry. I will give what sisterly affection requires. But I will not give her my house. Father's face darkened. Jiwei, don't start acting willful again. I looked at him. This time I truly felt cold. Father, why must her dignity come out of my pocket? The next morning, I moved every relevant account book into father's study. Not one or two. 14. Nanny Qin and shopkeeper Ju came with me. The moment father saw us, his face turned black. What are you doing? Separating the accounts. I opened the first ledger. Over the past 7 years, the Shen household has borrowed 64,000 taels from mother's dowry holdings. Father has already acknowledged the first 30,000. Uncle Ju and I have checked the remainder item by item. Profits from Sunxian paper mill transferred into the household accounts amount to enough. Father slammed his hand down over one page. You intend to make the entire family miserable. I stopped. Father thinks I'm making trouble? Are you not? Mingzhu is your sister. She is marrying into a prince's household. A respectable dowry will benefit you in the future too. Why must you be so incapable of tolerating her? Incapable of tolerating her. The word struck like a needle driven into my ear. For a moment, every sound in the study disappeared. The room blurred. In its place appeared the decree of deposition. Jealous. Intolerant. So it had begun much earlier than I realized. Whenever I refused to give way, someone said, "You cannot tolerate others." My fingertips turned cold. Nanny Qin gently supported my arm. My lady, I came back to myself. I looked at father, then asked quietly, what does it mean to tolerate someone? He froze. She marries her husband. I protect my property. What does one have to do with the other? Must I give her a house before anyone can call us loving sisters? If I don't, does that make me jealous and intolerant? Father's expression shifted. Perhaps even he realized how harsh his accusation sounded. I didn't say that. But that's what you mean. I laid mother's dowry list on the desk. The house stays with me. And these old accounts will be completely separated. Father paced twice in anger. You're only 14. Even if these things are under your control now, what happens after you marry? I looked at him. They remain mine. Will you? Father, if you truly believe these properties will ultimately belong to the Shen household anyway, then why did mother bother making a dowry inventory at all? This time he had nothing to say. I did not demand immediate repayment. He didn't have that much liquid silver anyway. In the end, he transferred 2 shops that the Shen family had intended to place into common family property, along with a small farm, to offset part of what was owed. Shopkeeper Ju drew up new accounts. Father signed them with a grim face. I felt no thrill of victory. Only belated exhaustion. Drawing a boundary with my own father was harder than telling Pei Hong I would not marry him. Pei Hong had hurt me later. Father had taught me to be sensible from childhood. After leaving father's study, I didn't return to my own courtyard. For some reason, my feet turned toward hacking press. Only when I reached the door did I realize I had not even considered going anywhere else. Gu Chongyang was inside checking accounts. When he saw me, he merely looked up. "You look terrible today." "Yes." "Want to talk?" "No." "Sit over there." He pointed to a table at the back. I looked at it. "Wasn't that table by the window?" "I moved it." "Why?" "There are too many people near the entrance today. It's quieter inside." That was all. He did not ask who had wronged me. He did not offer to confront anyone. He did not say, "How could your father treat you that way?" He simply gave me a place where no one would disturb me. I sat. Suddenly, I wanted to cry. The tears didn't fall. I picked up a ledger and stared at it without understanding a single character. Gu Chongyang continued working in the front room. About the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, he brought me a cup of tea. He set it down, then turned to leave. I couldn't help calling. "Gu Chongyang." "Yes." "Why don't you ask? Didn't you say you didn't want to talk?" I fell silent. He looked at me. "You can tell me when you want to." Then he left again. I stared at the tea. For the first time, I understood something very clearly. Being cared for did not always mean someone barging into your problems. It did not mean they had the right to seize control of your life because they wanted to help. Sometimes it simply meant when you were tired, someone gave you a quiet place to sit. After that, I visited hacking more and more often. Sometimes for business, sometimes to check accounts, sometimes to do nothing. Gu Chongyang did not always entertain me. He worked. I sat. 3 months passed that way. One day on my way home, I suddenly realized something. Whenever something happened lately, the first place I wanted to go was no longer my own courtyard. It was hacking press. The realization unsettled me. I knew too well what depending on a person had cost me in my previous life. So the next day I didn't go. Nor the day after. On the 4th afternoon, Gu Chongyang personally came to Sunxian. His first words were, "Were you sick?" I shook my head. "No." "Then why haven't you come for 4 days?" I opened my mouth. I didn't know how to answer. He studied me, then said, "Never mind. It isn't business. I won't ask." And he truly didn't. Which somehow made me even more uncomfortable. That night, I lay in bed thinking for a long time. Perhaps the hardest thing in this life had never been leaving Peihong. Perhaps it was this: after leaving all those old relationships behind, would I still dare to let another person come close? When I was 16, father began arranging possible marriages for me again. The first candidate was the second son of a vice minister in the Ministry of Rights. The second was the eldest legitimate grandson of a prominent Jiangnan clan. The third was even more distinguished. After I rejected all 3, father finally lost patience. "What kind of man do you intend to marry?" I thought for a long time. "I haven't decided." "Do you even intend to marry at all?" "Not now." Father laughed in disbelief. "Do you plan to remain unmarried forever?" I answered calmly. "If I never meet anyone I wish to marry, then remaining unmarried would be fine." He looked at me as though I had gone mad. But I meant it. I had married too young in my previous life. Everyone had told me that a woman needed a proper destination. Later, I discovered that marrying the wrong man was not necessarily better than having no destination at all. father couldn't force me. My mother's property was now clearly separated and under my control. In the end, he had no choice but to postpone the matter. But word somehow reached Gu Chongyang. I did not know who told him. I only noticed that he stopped coming. At first, I assumed the press was busy. Then half a month passed and even paper purchases were negotiated by his shopkeeper. I knew something was wrong. I went directly to hacking. Gu Chongyang was seated in the back room carving a type sample. His hand paused when he saw me. What brings you here today? Are you avoiding me? No. Then why haven't you come to Sunxian? The shopkeeper can negotiate purchases. Why did you negotiate them yourself? Silence. I looked at him and suddenly I was angry. Gu Chongyang, if you don't want to see me, say so. Don't hide behind business. He set down the carving knife. After a long pause, he said, your family has been arranging marriages for you. Your relationship with them is already tense. If I'm constantly appearing beside you at a time like this, people may decide you're rejecting every proposal because of me. I understood instantly. So you decided for me that staying away would be better? He said nothing. I laughed out of sheer anger. Don't you hate other people deciding your life for you? How did you end up doing the same thing to me? His expression changed. My chest rose and fell. Words poured out. You think I'm vulnerable to using you as an escape? You think I might grab hold of you because I want to run from the Shen family? You could have told me any of that. I could have thought about it myself. But instead you said nothing and disappeared. Is that respect? You didn't even allow me to decide whether I still wanted to see you. The room remained silent for a long time. Gu Chongyang looked down at the carving knife. Eventually, he said, I was wrong. That stopped me. He looked up. It's a habit. What is? Leaving before things become complicated. My family, friends, whenever something begins to feel unsuitable, I step away first. He spoke slowly. I always thought that if I didn't let people come too close, no one could decide things for me. Apparently, I can make decisions for other people too. I said nothing. I was still angry. But the feeling of being violated slowly receded. Gu Chongyang asked, then what do you think about your marriage proposals and me? For the first time, he said it so directly that I no longer knew what to say. I was silent for a long while. I don't know. He nodded. Neither do I. I looked at him. He actually smiled. So we don't need to know yet. Let's give it a year. A year? Yes. For 1 year, you won't make a decision because your family is pressuring you to marry, and I won't make one because my family is pressuring me to go home. We keep doing business. We keep seeing each other. 1 year from now, if you still think I'm a decent person, and I still think you're a decent person, then we'll talk. No promises. No vows. We hadn't even said we liked each other yet. Something inside me became quiet. I nodded. Fine. He added, if you change your mind during the year, you can say so directly. Same. That was how we made the strangest of agreements. No jade pendant, no keepsake. Only a 1-year paper supply contract. On the way home, I laughed for a very long time. Nanny Chin asked, what are you laughing about, my lady? Nothing. I had simply discovered for the first time that affection did not need to rush toward an outcome. One did not have to like someone today and discuss marriage tomorrow. You could look first. Take your time. During that year, Mingzhu officially married Pei Hong. The Shen estate was as lively as New Year's Day. She passed in front of me wearing a brilliant red bridal gown. Then she stopped. Sister, do you regret it? I straightened a tassel the wind had blown crooked. No. She studied me, then asked, what if I live better than you someday? I smiled. Then that's good. Again. She had no idea how to answer. I meant it. If her life turned out well, no part of mine would disappear because of it. But only 3 months after the wedding, she sent someone to find me. The message was simple. Second lady says she would like her elder sister's help. Mingzhu had lost some weight when she came. Not enough to look ill, but that old dazzling brightness had dimmed. She carried 4 account books. Sister, look at these for me. I read 2 pages and immediately saw the problem. The accounts from several estates under the prince's household were disorganized. Nothing catastrophic, but every steward used a different method. Expenses were recorded under too many categories. Every explanation sounded plausible. In my previous life, after marrying Pei Hong, I spent half a year sorting out these exact accounts. Back then, he held my hand and said, Jiwei, with you here, I never have to worry about anything. For those words, I worried for another decade. Mingzhu sat across from me. I know you can do it. Haven't you been studying accounts for years, sister? Help me for 1 month. Help me establish the rules. I closed the book. I won't. Her expression stiffened. Why? I don't want to. Do you still blame me for marrying Pei Hong? I looked at her. Who you marry has nothing to do with me. Then why won't you help? Because this is your household. Your accounts. If I organize them for you once, what happens next time? She bit her lip. But I don't know how. You can learn. I pulled over a blank sheet and wrote 3 names. First, Master Lin. Excellent with old accounts. Expensive. Second, Shopkeeper Chin. Excellent at establishing new systems. Terrible temper. Third is cheaper, but you'll have to supervise him yourself. I pushed the paper toward her. Choose. Mingzhu didn't take it. Her eyes suddenly filled with tears. Sister, do you hate me? I froze. Had I hated her before? Of course. In the days after my deposition, I had even wondered, if she had never existed, would everything have been different? But since returning, I had been busy with accounts, busy learning the paper business, busy separating tangled responsibilities from father, busy arguing with Gu Chongyang and then making peace with him. I hadn't seriously hated her in a long time. I used to, I answered honestly. And now I don't have that much free time. She stared. I laughed first. Mingzhu, you always think that if I refuse to help you, it must be jealousy. But I truly don't have enough energy to manage your life too. You chose the man you married. You have to learn how to live with that choice. The tears never fell. She lowered her eyes and finally took the paper. At the door, she suddenly said, actually, he's good to me. I didn't need to ask whom she meant. It's just, she remained silent for a long time. Sometimes I'm tired. He likes me sensible. He likes me when I don't fight him. So sometimes I don't know whether I should say what I really think. My fingers slowly stopped moving. For an instant, I saw another version of my former self. I had traded competence for Pei Hong's need. Mingzhu traded gentleness for Pei Hong's affection. We seemed completely different. In truth, we were doing the same thing, trying to become whatever would satisfy someone else. I did not take the opportunity to criticize Pei Hong. I only said, ask yourself whether you want to say it. If you do, then say it. She looked at me. What if he stops liking me afterward? I thought for a moment. Then sooner or later you need to know whether he likes you or only the version of you that never says no. She stood there for a long time. The next time I saw Pei Hong was at a small gathering of women from the imperial clan. He had been married for some time. He seemed steadier. After the gathering, he passed me and suddenly said, Mingzhu came to see you. Yes. You gave her the names of several accountants. Yes. He smiled. You used to hate entrusting things to other people. I looked up. I used to be foolish. I thought doing everything myself was how I proved I had value. His expression shifted. She has had a difficult few months. I said nothing. Then he began. If it had been you, and stopped. But I understood. If it had been me, those accounts would have been settled faster, better, with less inconvenience to him. So even now he was the same. What he missed first was not me as a person. It was the convenience I once provided. I wasn't even angry anymore. I only thought the answer to my previous life was becoming clearer and clearer. Autumn came. Our 1-year agreement was nearly finished. Neither Gu Chongyang nor I mentioned it. We continued doing business, continued seeing each other. One day when I went to hacking, I noticed last year's 1-year contract waiting beneath a paperweight on his desk. The edges were worn soft. I couldn't help asking, why do you still have that? Business contracts should be kept. This one has expired. Gu Chongyang looked up. It's almost been a year. My fingers stiffened. I know. He watched me, but said nothing more. Neither did I. It was as though both of us understood, after the year ended, there ought to be some answer. Then news spread through the capital. Pei Hong had been moved into the Eastern Palace. Mingzhu was no longer a prince's consort. She was now crown princess. Father arrived at my separate residence that very evening. His face carried a joy I had not seen in years. The moment I saw him, I had a strange premonition. Sure enough, before he had finished 1 cup of tea, he said, Jiwei, Mingzhu's position is different now. The Shen family needs to prepare more for her future. I slowly set down my tea. What does father want? He looked at me. Those shops of yours. Set aside a portion of their annual profits. Consider it support from her maternal family. I felt no surprise. How much? That seemed to catch him off guard. After a pause, he said, 30%. I laughed. Father, do you know how much Sunxian earns in a year? Certainly not a small amount. You don't know yet. You immediately ask for 30%. His face hardened. Jiwei, this isn't only about Mingzhu. She is crown princess now. If she is secure, the Shen family is secure. If the Shen family prospers, does that not benefit you too? Familiar. Painfully familiar. Pei Hong used to say the same. If the prince's household prospers, you prosper. If the Eastern Palace is secure, you'll be Empress someday. Everyone loved trading some future version of your benefit for my present sacrifice. I said slowly, I'm already doing very well. Father blinked. What? My paper mill makes enough. My farms produce crops. My bookstore doesn't lose money. My house is comfortable. I sleep whenever I want. Why must I hand over what I have now so the Shin family might become even better later? His face darkened. How can you think only of yourself? That accusation used to frighten me more than anything. Selfish. Disobedient. Ungrateful. As though the moment a woman considered herself, she had committed some moral crime. Now hearing it, it wasn't so frightening. Father continued, your sister's position in the Eastern Palace isn't easy. The stronger her maternal family, the more secure she is. You are sisters. She used to be the most sensible child. The words landed. And suddenly I almost wanted to cry. Not from hurt. It felt as though I had finally reached the root of something. 2 lives. All those suffocating responsibilities had been hidden inside that single word. Sensible. You're sensible, so yield. You're sensible, so endure. You're sensible, so don't calculate. I spoke softly. Father, I've already spent 1 lifetime being that sensible daughter. He froze. I continued. From now on, I'll contribute what ordinary filial duty requires. I'll send gifts for grandmother's birthday. If you become ill, I'll arrange physicians and medicine. If Mingzhu faces a real difficulty, I can tell her what options she has. But her marriage is not my responsibility, and the Shin family's future cannot all be placed on my shoulders. You cannot decide that because I have something, I therefore ought to give it away. Father's face had gone pale. You think your wings are strong now? Yes. For the first time I did not deny it. Because I protected what mother left me. So when I say no now, I no longer have to wonder whether someone will cut off my livelihood. He could not answer. He sat for a long time. At last, he rose. At the door, he looked back. Jiwei, you weren't like this before. I nodded. No. I used to be much more tired. The door closed. I remained sitting for a long time. Nanny Chin entered. Her eyes were red. My lady, do you regret it? I shook my head. No. I was only a little sad. Father did love me. But the daughter he knew how to love was always supposed to be sensible. The moment I stopped fitting that shape, he no longer knew what to do with me. 3 days later, Pei Hong came to see me. Not in secret. He visited father openly in his capacity as crown prince. Before leaving, he asked to speak with me in a side hall. I agreed. Some conversations deserved an ending. Pei Hong sat beside the window. Years had passed. He increasingly resembled the man I remembered, only without the imperial robes. He looked at me. Minister Shen seems to have argued with you. Family matter. Because of Mingzhu? Not entirely. Pei Hong was silent. Then unexpectedly said, she has actually done quite well these years. I was slightly surprised that he had begun by defending her. She is skilled at dealing with women of the imperial clan. Some things, he stopped. I smiled. She's more tactful. Not exactly. Softer. I nodded. That is one of her strengths. Pei-hong studied me for a long time. Do you truly not care at all now about what if back then? He paused for a long time. If the marriage negotiations with you had succeeded, would many things be easier now? At last I looked at him. It took me years to understand that sentence in my previous life. In this one, I understood immediately. He had not asked, if you had married me, would I be happier? He had asked, would things be easier? I smiled. Your Highness, what do you regret? Not marrying me? Or not having someone who would continue handling everything for you? His expression went completely still. The room was silent. I didn't force him to answer. His silence was enough. After a long while, he said quietly. She never used to see me this way. No. In the past, I believed being needed by you meant being loved by you. It was the first time I had ever truly said the words aloud. So every time you needed me, I tried harder and harder until in the end there was nothing of me left. Pei-hong looked at me. I did not know what he was thinking. And I no longer needed to know. For the first time, the most important perspective in my life was my own. I stood. Your Highness, let the past remain in the past. You chose Mingzhu. Live well with her. I intend to live well too. When I stepped out of the side hall, sunlight flooded the courtyard. For the first time, I felt as though the rain in the palace where I had died had finally stopped. That evening, I went to Hacking Press. Gu Chongyang was closing the accounts. The moment I entered, he said, I have something to tell you too. What? My family asked me one final time whether I'll go back. What did you say? No. What about the press? It earns what it earns. And if it loses money someday, I'll close it. He spoke calmly. I used to refuse to close because I thought closing meant they had one. Now I think if one day I truly don't want to continue, keeping it alive merely to prove something would also be foolish. I laughed. You've improved. So have you. He closed the ledger. Shin Jiwei. Yes. 1 year has passed. I pretended confusion. What year? He stared at me. It has been 13 months. My smile disappeared. Gu Chongyang wasn't smiling either. He asked seriously that question from last year. Do you have an answer now? My fingers rested lightly against the table. This time, Father wasn't pressuring me. Pei-hong had nothing to do with it. No one was telling me I should marry. For once, I could ask only myself. Did I want to live beside this person? I didn't answer immediately. Give me 3 days. He nodded. Fine. On the third morning, I went to Hacking. He was peeling chestnuts. When he saw me, he kicked a stool toward me. Sit. I sat, picked up a chestnut, and failed to peel it for quite some time. Gu Chongyang asked. Decided? Yes. What did you decide? I did not say I liked him. I did not ask whether he loved me. Instead, I said, if we marry, my paper mill remains mine. He nodded. My press doesn't merge with it either. Fine. Household expenses get a separate account. Agreed. Each of us manages our own shops. Yes. Sometimes I won't want to attend social gatherings. Then don't. If someone from the Gu family comes looking for you, deal with them yourself. If someone from the Shin family comes looking for you, deal with them yourself. I glared at him. Why should I? He reconsidered. Fine. Each person handles their own relatives. Agreed. What if we argue? Gu Chongyang stopped peeling the chestnut. He thought seriously. No disappearing. I froze. I used to do that. I'd leave without explaining. I won't do it again. I lowered my gaze. Then I can't keep everything inside either. Right. One more thing. What? Sometimes you're too cold. Sometimes you interfere too much. I looked up. He remained perfectly serious. You said we were supposed to discuss things honestly. I laughed despite myself. Fine. Continue. We ended up talking for the entire morning. Where to live. How many servants we wanted. How far the press and paper mill should be from our home. If we had children someday, who would do more if one of us became busy? Was the other automatically responsible for cleaning up the mess? I said, no. We can help, but it cannot be assumed. Gu Chongyang nodded. Remember that. Finally, he asked, anything else? I thought for a long time. Yes. What? When I'm sleeping in the afternoon, no one wakes me. Gu Chongyang looked at me, then laughed. That one's easiest. I laughed too. Sunlight fell across the table through the latticed window. No flowers, no vows, nothing earth-shattering. But I knew this was my answer. I did not need Gu Chongyang to save me. Nor did I need to escape the Shin family into some other family. I simply thought, if in the years ahead there was someone like this sitting beside a window, each of us busy with our own work, speaking sometimes, arguing sometimes, perhaps that would be nice. I married at 19. The wedding was not especially extravagant. Father still believed Gu Chongyang had too little ambition for the future, but he could no longer decide for me. Mingzhu returned for the wedding too. By then, she was crown princess. Her clothes and jewels were far more magnificent than before. When she came to add her gift to my bridal dowry, she looked around at the comparatively modest furnishings. Sister, do you truly think this is good? Yes. Very good. He doesn't even have what Pei Hong, she stopped herself. I smiled. Doesn't have what Pei Hong has. She smiled too. Nothing. Before leaving, she suddenly said softly. A few days ago, I argued with His Highness. I raised a brow. You know how to argue now. She glared. Sister, I simply used to choose not to. I didn't expose the lie. What happened afterward? Nothing much. He was angry for 2 days. Then we talked. She paused. I used to think if I wasn't forceful the way you were, he would always like me. Then I realized if I never say anything, he doesn't even know why I'm unhappy. I looked at her and felt strangely emotional. We had taken completely different paths. Yet in the end, we were learning the same thing. Do not erase yourself merely to be liked. We did not embrace and cry. We did not suddenly forgive every wound between us. She remained herself. I remained myself. We simply no longer needed to prove who was living better by defeating the other. Later, Pei Hong fully entered the Eastern Palace. Later still, the old emperor became gravely ill. 2 years after that, Pei Hong ascended the throne. The news reached me while I was at Sunxian inspecting a newly made practice paper. Gu Chongyang read the court gazette. His emperor now. I didn't even look up. Oh. You knew him before, didn't you? Yes. Want to attend the enthronement ceremony? I looked at him. Do you? No. Neither do I. So we stayed home. Sunxian never became the greatest paper mill in the realm. I refused expansion twice. The first time, shopkeeper Ju could not understand. My lady, if we purchase the eastern watermill as well, output will at least double. How many more accountants would we need? 3. How many warehouses? At least 2 more. How many additional accounts would I have to read every month? Shopkeeper Ju calculated, then wisely said nothing. I waved my hand. Don't buy it. Gu Chongyang laughed beside me. Owner Shen has absolutely no grand ambition. I looked at him. Owner Gu has opened only one additional branch of hacking this year. Neither of us is exactly conquering the world. We began producing an inexpensive kind of practice paper. The profit margin was small, but it sold very well. Together with affordable account books, ordinary shops could buy it. What I earned every year was enough. Enough to live. Enough to pay the people who worked for us. Enough to buy whatever I genuinely wanted. Anything beyond that, I was too lazy to chase. Father never truly understood me. When we met during festivals, he would occasionally say, "You weren't like this before." Every time I answered, "No. I used to be busier." Eventually, he stopped saying it. Our relationship never became particularly close, but I fulfilled the filial duties I chose to fulfill. Once he became ill, I sent a physician. Medicine. Someone checked on his condition every day. I did not move back into the Shen estate to personally attend him at his bedside. Third aunt privately called me cold-hearted. I heard. I didn't explain. Someone thinking badly of me had never killed anyone. That was the second most important thing I learned after being reborn. The first was, watch your own money. Half a year after Pei Hong became emperor, he formally appointed his empress. The choice had not changed. Xin Mingzhu. On the day the decree was announced, bells and drums rang across the capital. I had stayed up late the previous night looking over new accounts from the paper mill. By afternoon, I was exhausted. The noise outside was unbearable. I rolled over. The bells still found their way through the window. Gu Chongyang sat beneath it, reading samples newly printed by hacking. When he saw me move, he asked, "Did it wake you?" Yes. The Empress is being formally installed today. I know. Want me to close the window? Yes. He rose. The wooden shutters closed. The sound immediately softened. I buried my face in the pillow again. In my previous life, I had fought for that phoenix throne for years. Fought for father's approval. Fought for Pei Hong to look at me. Fought to become a prince's consort. Fought to become crown princess. And finally, I became empress for 3 months. Then the position went to Xin Mingzhu. I lay dying in the neglected palace, unable to understand. Where had I lost? Only after living again did I realize I should never have entered that contest in the first place. The room quieted. Gu Chongyang returned to his seat by the window. Pages turned softly. Half asleep, I murmured. Is it still lively outside? Very. Want to go look? No. Good. I fell asleep again. This time, no one came to wake me and tell me to be sensible. No one told me who I ought to fight for. And no one decided that if I wasn't constantly useful, I was no longer worthy of love. At last, I understood. Truly stepping away did not mean wanting nothing from life. What belonged to me, I kept. What I loved, I took seriously. Responsibilities that were not mine, I refused. Positions I did not want, I did not fight for. As for what other people thought, that belonged to them. This life at last was mine to live. Extra Story 1. The first time Gu Chongyang discovered that marrying a wife who loved sleeping was also quite difficult. In the second month after our wedding, Gu Chongyang and I had our first argument. The cause was tiny. So tiny that when Mingzhu heard about it later, she laughed at me for nearly half an hour. That afternoon, I was napping. Sleeping very well. Then someone called beside my ear. Jiwei. I turned over. Ignored him. A little while later. Shin Jiwei. I pulled the quilt over my head. Still ignored him. Then one corner of the quilt was lifted. My eyes opened. Gu Chongyang stood beside the bed, looking extremely serious. I became serious too. What happened? He was quiet. The house is on fire. I shot upright. Where? The kitchen. Bad? No. Then why did you wake me? Gu Chongyang fell silent. We looked at each other. Then I remembered the final rule we had negotiated before marriage: no one was allowed to wake me during my afternoon nap. I slowly narrowed my eyes. Gu Chongyang. Yes. You violated the agreement. He looked genuinely unable to comprehend me. The kitchen caught fire. You said it wasn't serious. The fire is already out. Then why are you waking me? I thought I should tell you. Couldn't you tell me when I woke? Silence. For the first time, Gu Chongyang wore the expression of a man who had married and only afterward discovered that the world contained people this unreasonable. I lay down again. Leave. He didn't move. Jiwei. Half the kitchen wall burned. Repair it from the household account. The stove collapsed too. Build another. What do we eat tonight? I considered. Eat outside. Gu Chongyang remained beside the bed for a long time. You truly aren't getting up? No. Fine. He left. The door closed quietly. Satisfied, I returned to sleep. About half an hour later, I woke naturally. The courtyard seemed unusually quiet. I washed, dressed, and stepped outside. Not a servant in sight. Then I heard voices coming from the front courtyard. I walked over and stopped. 3 large tables had been arranged in the middle of the courtyard. Gu Chongyang sat at the center. Beside him were the managers from the press, Uncle Ju from the paper mill, several accountants, and 2 masons. The tables were covered with dishes. I stood in the doorway. What is this? Gu Chongyang looked up. Eating outside. I stared. Apparently, when he said eat outside, he meant bring the restaurant home. Shopkeeper Ju quickly explained. Young Master Gu said the kitchen couldn't cook today, so he invited everyone to eat together. I sat beside Gu Chongyang, then lowered my voice. You did this on purpose. He picked up a piece of fish. Did what? Invite all these people. Didn't you say to eat outside? I meant the two of us. You didn't say that. I had no answer. Gu Chongyang calmly continued. Before we married, we agreed, if you want something, say it clearly. Don't expect other people to guess. I stared at him. At last, I understood. He was taking revenge for the afternoon nap. I clenched my teeth. Then why did the kitchen catch fire? His chopsticks paused. Shopkeeper Ju looked as though he was trying not to laugh. My suspicion sharpened. What happened? Gu Chongyang cleared his throat. Nothing. Tell me. He refused. I looked at the steward. The steward lowered his head. His shoulders were shaking. Finally, a young maid lost control. Madam, young master wanted to make sweet tremella soup for you. I slowly turned toward Gu Chongyang. He ate fish without expression. You know how to make it? No. Then why did you try? I heard you've been getting sleepy lately. I wanted you to have something nourishing. And then the fire was slightly too large. Slightly. I looked toward the kitchen. Half the wall was still smoking. He said nothing. I wanted to laugh. Tried not to. So you burned the kitchen? Yes. Then woke me? Yes. And now you're blaming me for refusing to get up? No. The answer came much too quickly. I finally laughed aloud. Everyone around us joined in. Gu Chongyang's ears turned slightly red. That was the first time I discovered that a man who could reason through nearly anything in life possessed absolutely no reason inside a kitchen. That night, there was a bowl of tremella soup on the bedroom table. Gu Chongyang was reading. I took a sip. Very good. But. Yes. Don't try to cook it yourself again. He turned a page. I know. I drank another mouthful, then remembered something. One more thing. What? Next time the kitchen catches fire, if it's already been put out, don't wake me. Gu Chongyang looked at me for a long moment. What if the entire kitchen burns? Wait until the fire is out. Silence. What if it reaches the courtyard? Save the ledgers first. Shin Jiwei. Yes. Do you save people first or ledgers? I thought seriously. You first. His expression finally softened. Then I added, you're better at recalculating the accounts. Gu Chongyang stared at me. That night, he stole my favorite pillow. I chased him across half the courtyard. In the end, husband and wife reached a new agreement: if the kitchen ever caught fire again, as long as the flames had not reached the bedroom, no one was allowed to disturb my afternoon nap. As for Gu Chongyang, he was permanently forbidden from approaching the stove. Extra story 2, the first thing Shin Mingzhu did after becoming Empress was come to my house for dinner. In the 3rd month after Shin Mingzhu became Empress, she suddenly appeared at my back gate. No imperial procession, no crowd of palace maids. Only 2 trusted attendants. When I saw her, I was crouching in the courtyard choosing radishes. We looked at each other. She frowned first. Sister, why are you selecting vegetables yourself? I looked down. We're braising beef brisket tonight. This one is sweet. She was silent, then asked, is there enough for me? I looked up. Aren't you the Empress? Is an Empress forbidden to eat beef brisket? No, I mean, does the palace not feed you? Mingzhu's face collapsed immediately. Don't mention it. She strode into the courtyard and headed for the main room as though she owned the place. I followed carrying my radishes. How did you get out? A formal visit to my family. Father knows. Yes. Then why aren't you at the Shin estate? She stopped, turned around. Sister, I was home for less than half an hour. Father had already asked me for 6 things. I couldn't help myself. What's 6? Mingzhu counted on her fingers. Arrange an official position for our cousin. Find a tutor for another cousin. Arrange a good marriage for third uncle's daughter. Repair the old Shin residence. Ask His Majesty to give father an honorary title. And, she took a deep breath. Ask me to persuade His Majesty to take fewer consorts. I stared. The last request at least had some logic. What did you say? I said the first 3 aren't my responsibility. He can pay for the 4th himself. I refused to interfere in the 5th. And the 6th, she stopped. I raised a brow. You persuaded him? Mingzhu gave a cold laugh. I took all the portraits of the proposed women and sent them straight to the imperial study. Told His Majesty to choose for himself. I stopped walking. Her expression became strange. He burned every portrait in front of me. That did not sound like the Peihong of my previous life. Mingzhu sighed. Then he said, His Empress has become more bad-tempered lately. I told him, yes, His Majesty spoiled me into it. I laughed. Mingzhu glared. You're laughing? After I took this position, I finally discovered there is work from morning to night. Consorts paying morning respects. Palace personnel. Female relatives of the imperial clan entering the palace. Festival gifts. I get a headache every time I see another ledger. I set down my radishes. Don't you have accountants? Yes. Then why are you doing all of it? I can't simply do nothing. I looked at her. Seriously. You can do less. She froze. What do you mean? Not everything must be personally done by you. If something can be delegated, delegate it. If someone else makes a mistake, let the person who made it take responsibility. Stop pulling every problem onto yourself. Mingzhu was silent. Then suddenly asked, Sister, were you like this before? I knew she meant my former personality. She could not know about my previous life, so I only smiled. Worse. She nodded. I can tell. I stared at her. My younger sister was still irritating. Dinner was soon ready. When Gu Chongyang returned and saw Shin Mingzhu sitting at our dining table, his steps stopped. He bowed. Your Majesty. Mingzhu waved a hand. No need. Then she stared at the beef brisket. Brother-in-law, excellent timing. Sister says there isn't enough food. Gu Chongyang looked at me. I immediately shook my head. I said no such thing. Mingzhu remained perfectly calm. I heard it in her tone. Gu Chongyang finally seemed to understand that people emerging from the palace could not always be trusted. He sat. Had just lifted his chopsticks when Mingzhu asked, Brother, is sister like this at home too? Gu Chongyang looked at her. Like what? She sleeps whenever she wants. Refuses to deal with things she doesn't want. Reads half a ledger and goes to drink tea. Yes. You don't criticize her? Gu Chongyang thought. Why would I? Mingzhu looked genuinely shocked. If she doesn't manage the household, what happens? I immediately corrected her. I do manage it. I simply don't manage every single thing. Gu Chongyang added, the person responsible handles the matter. My press, I manage. Her paper mill, she manages. The household has a steward. If something truly cannot be resolved, then we discuss it together. Mingzhu slowly set down her chopsticks. Her expression became complicated. What? I asked. She sighed. I'm suddenly wondering whether being Empress is really as desirable as I once thought. I nearly sprayed soup across the table. Gu Chongyang calmly passed me a cloth. Mingzhu continued. I used to think, if sister had something, I needed it too. Thinking about it now, why did I insist on stealing the most exhausting thing you had? I wiped my mouth. Because you didn't steal my ledgers. She glared. Gu Chongyang lowered his head to eat. His shoulders were visibly shaking. After dinner, Mingzhu refused to leave. She insisted she could return before the palace gates were locked. She wandered around my courtyard, saw my couch, immediately lay down. Sister, this couch is extremely comfortable. Get up. No. That's my afternoon nap couch. I am Empress now. So the realm belongs to His Majesty. This house belongs to me. So now you remember how ownership works. Silence. Then she very naturally moved farther inside. Fine, give me half. I stared at her. Apparently, becoming Empress did not make a person's skin any thinner. In the end, the two of us lay on opposite halves and truly slept for half an hour. When Mingzhu woke, her hair was slightly messy. She sat up. Sister, I actually envied you more than anyone when we were young. I turned my head. Now? She thought seriously a little. What do you envy? That no one dares wake you from your afternoon nap. I laughed for a long time. When she left for the palace, I walked her to the door. She went several steps, then turned. Sister, can I come again next month? For what? Dinner? Does the palace truly not have food? It does. Then why come here? Mingzhu answered as though it were obvious. In the palace, one cannot lie down while eating. I had no answer. She truly returned every few months after that. Father found out and was deeply gratified. He assumed we sisters had finally become inseparable. Only I knew, 8 times out of 10, Her Majesty visited because she wanted to be lazy. The remaining 2, the beef brisket at my house was genuinely excellent. Extra story 3, after Father stayed at my house for 3 days, he finally understood the meaning of rest. When Father was 62, he injured his lower back. It wasn't serious. The physician said 10 days of rest would be enough. Unfortunately, the Shan estate happened to be repairing its roof. Grandmother's courtyard was constantly full of visitors. Father complained that it was too noisy. Eventually, someone had the brilliant idea of sending him to my house. When I saw the carriage stop outside, I fell silent. Gu Chongyang stood beside me. What do we do? I looked at him. You tell me. He's my father-in-law. We can't throw him out. We could send him to the Empress. Gu Chongyang looked at me. Are you serious? I considered. Never mind. Pei Hong probably wouldn't thank me. So father moved in. On the first morning at 5:15, I was still asleep. I heard father's voice outside. Why is she still in bed? A maid answered quietly. Madam usually rises after 7. Father sounded horrified. That late? I closed my eyes tighter. Here it came. A little while later, Nanny Chin entered. My lady, after calling me that for so many years, she never quite managed to change after my marriage. Master says the morning determines the success of the entire day. I pulled the quilt higher. Tell him my day begins at 7. Nanny Chin laughed and left. By breakfast, father had already finished half a book when I wandered in. He frowned. Do you know what hour it is? 7. I know. Then why did father ask? He choked. Gu Chongyang drank his porridge with his head down, clearly unwilling to participate in conflict between wife and father-in-law. Father quickly changed targets. Chongyang, you simply allow her to sleep this late? Gu Chongyang looked up. She sometimes reads accounts at night. That doesn't mean household rules can be abandoned. Our house doesn't have that rule. Father was speechless. I almost laughed aloud. At noon on the first day, father discovered that after lunch, I went to sleep again. This time he could not restrain himself. You didn't rise until 7 this morning. And you're sleeping again? Afternoon nap. How can one person need this much sleep? I looked at him seriously. Father, I've studied this question for many years. One truly can. He stormed away. On the second day, he began observing Gu Chongyang. I suspected he hoped to find evidence that my laziness must inevitably damage my marriage. After watching for an entire morning, he discovered that Gu Chongyang wasn't particularly diligent either. When hacking had nothing urgent, he didn't leave until late morning. Sometimes he returned in the afternoon and spent half the day reading by the window. Father finally asked, Don't you need to report to a government office? No. You aren't preparing for the examinations? No. Does the press not require daily supervision? The manager supervises it. Father was silent. What exactly do the two of you do all day? I happened to walk past. Father's expression became increasingly baffled. On the third day, something happened. A Shan household steward hurried over. Tenants on one of the estates outside the city were arguing over irrigation rights. They wanted father to return and handle it. Father's back hurt. He couldn't travel. Instinctively, he looked at me. Jiwei. I was eating grapes. Yes. You handled plenty of estate matters with shopkeeper Ju in the past. Go take a look. I didn't move. Father frowned. What? That estate belongs to the Shan family, not me. We're all one family. I slowly swallowed my grape. Father, you're currently staying in my house. By that reasoning, does hacking press belong to the Shan family too? Gu Chongyang walked through the door just in time to hear. Absolutely not. Father stared at him. I tried not to laugh. See? Even your own son-in-law disagrees. Father's face darkened. In the end, he had no choice but to tell the steward to find someone else. Less than half a day later, the dispute was settled. The tenants had simply been fighting over water. The estate manager rearranged the irrigation schedule. Father listened to the report, then stared. That simple? Yes. I picked up another grape. Many things never required you to handle them personally. He said nothing. That afternoon, I took my usual nap. When I woke, the sun was already slanting west. I stepped into the courtyard and stopped. Father lay in a bamboo chair under the covered walkway. His eyes were closed. A pot of tea sat beside him. Gu Chongyang was reading nearby. I lowered my voice. Asleep? Yes. How long? About 15 minutes. I raised a brow. I was just about to wake Father when Gu Chongyang extended an arm to stop me. Don't. Why? Father-in-law only just fell asleep. I looked at Father, then at Gu Chongyang. I suddenly remembered how Father had spent all these years. The Shin family, its prospects, his eldest son, the Empress, the clan. I couldn't remember ever seeing him lie somewhere doing absolutely nothing. So I didn't wake him. I turned and went back inside. Half an hour later, Father woke on his own. The first thing he did, surprisingly, was not criticize anyone. He simply looked at the sky for a while. At dinner, he suddenly said, "Your courtyard is indeed very quiet." I nodded. That's why it was expensive. He frowned. What was expensive? The house. When I bought it. Father had grown used to me making remarks that left him speechless. He ignored me. When he left on the third day, he paused before climbing into the carriage. If the paper mill isn't busy, don't keep staring at it all day. I froze. Hearing those words from my father was almost as shocking as hearing the emperor announce he no longer wished to hold court. Does your back still hurt? No. Then why are you talking nonsense? His expression darkened. I mean, people should rest sometimes too. I smiled. I know. The carriage rolled away. Gu Chongyang stood beside me. Your father seems to have understood something. I shook my head. No. Why not? Give him 3 days back at the Shin estate. He'll start worrying about the entire family again. Gu Chongyang considered. At least he'll probably take afternoon naps. As it turned out, he was right. Later, Nanny Chin returned to the Shin estate to handle something. When she came back, she told me Father now rested for half an hour every afternoon. At first, he stubbornly insisted it was the physician's instruction for his back. Long after his back healed, he kept sleeping. The most ridiculous part was that once third uncle came to discuss something during the afternoon, Father actually told the servants, "Make him wait. Master is taking his afternoon rest." I laughed for nearly 15 minutes. Gu Chongyang asked, "You're that happy?" Of course. Why? I sat straighter and answered solemnly. At last, I have done one thing genuinely useful for the Shin family. What? I taught the head of the family how to take a nap. Gu Chongyang considered, then nodded with complete seriousness. A tremendous contribution. I leaned back against the soft couch. Sunlight outside the window was warm. And suddenly I thought, many things in this life had not ended dramatically. Father never transformed into a completely different man. Mingzhu did not learn one lesson and become carefree forever. Gu Chongyang was certainly not so perfect that he never irritated me. But perhaps that was good. Everyone learned slowly, changed slowly, sometimes fell back into old habits. And if one became truly tired, then sleep first. After all, most things could still be dealt with after waking. AI